Ain't it a shame? Everybody is familiar with the experience of shame. We often feel shame for things, conditions, situations we had nothing to do with. I'm thinking about the shame you've been made to feel about the color of your skin, the size of your gut, the missing limb, the crippled condition of your foot. I'm thinking about the shame you've had to endure because you're gay or transgender. Perhaps you share with me the experience of growing up in an alcoholic family. Abuse, rage, fighting, physical injuries inflicted, warrants served, arrests made, all created the constant fear that if you breathed a word about what was happening at home, you'd get into deep trouble. You had nothing to do with how the adults in your life were behaving, but you still couldn't bear the thought that your friends, or worse yet, your enemies, would find out, and there you'd be, shunned. In recent years, there's been a systematic campaign to loosen the shackles of shame. We're sick of being fat-shamed, disgraced because we're homosexual, or being targeted because we're black or Asian or Jewish. We could go on, we could talk about how shame has insidious forms of quietly and sometimes not so quietly depreciating people because they're women, or because they have buck teeth, or they don't fit into the culture they live in. We can even talk about the put-downs that smart people get when others feel threatened by their intelligence. We can talk about those who are spurned for being jocks, or lampooned because they're boys who throw like a girl. There's another kind of shame, however, that isn't like the rest. It's the shame that my grandmother meant when she would comment on something particularly egregious that I had done to my brother, or when she caught me in a lie or in an act of cheating. She wouldn't rail on about what a bad boy I was. She simply looked at me and said, "I'd be ashamed," pronouncing ashamed with an emphasis, a slight nod of her head, followed by a sigh of exasperation. And that's where shame gets complicated, because some shame, like that shame, serves a useful social purpose. It's different from guilt, which is a condition of either judgment or contrition, or both. Shaming for an inappropriate deed, for acts all the way from unkindnesses to utter reprobation, is a social way of calling errant people to account, to honor a standard of morality that society depends upon in order to function. Yeah, I know. Those very foundations of shame have often been misused, and there's no excusing that fact. But observe what happens when people in public life, for example, do heinous things, crazy things, dastardly things, dangerous things, and are utterly shameless for the harm they've inflicted. Shame? Such people seem to think that they get a pass to commit shameless actions. Shame's always for somebody else, somebody lower, somebody less powerful, more vulnerable. So shame gets misplaced, and in the process, everyone bears the cost of living in an environment where no shame amounts to no accountability. There are some ways to sort out shame so that we are neither the victims of being shamed for who we are, and also without ignoring the necessity of accountability. First, no good is served when you or anyone is made to feel ashamed of themselves for being who they are. So if you are the victim of shaming for conditions that are integral to your personhood, including your sex, gender, race, ethnicity, stature, physical characteristics, mental or emotional abilities and conditions, or any other facet of your own individual identity, do your best to claim what you've been penalized or marginalized for. And never ever deflect your own unfair being shamed onto some other vulnerable person or group, a common occurrence. Second, recognize the difference between being appropriately shamed of behavior that is antisocial, destructive, or harmful, and being ashamed of conditions or situations that you have no personal or shared responsibility for. I look back over my childhood and adolescence and realize times that I bullied vulnerable people. And while I've long since confessed and accepted forgiveness for such behavior, I own the fact that it was indeed shameful behavior. And being accountable for it was entirely just. And third, realize that shame is not simply a personal matter. Sometimes shame is leveled at a group of people because of their status or identity. It's a case of shared shame, of being shamed. But there's such a thing as corporate shaming. Sometimes corporate shame or shaming isn't even recognized or dealt with precisely because we think that shame is only an individual matter. Simply by being male, I am involved in the way males as a group behave. I've benefited from male privilege. I've enjoyed advantages that were denied others. And in my judgment, I'm not off the hook because I didn't personally invent systems like patriarchy or privilege that have diminished others. My response is to work for a more just society rather than ignore my complicity or deny it. It and the mechanics of shame and its offspring, such as racial, economic, and gender discrimination. If we look the world over, we find that human cultures differ widely in many respects, but no civilization long exists without a moral center. And whether we like it or not, a tool common to all societies is shame. It isn't going away. We're not going to live in a shame-free world. So let's do all we can to make sure that the uses of shame are legitimate, that they build justice and not injustice, that they respect the dignity and freedom of every person, and that we make no peace with the shamelessness that violates and destroys. Thanks for listening. I'm always glad to talk to you, and I can't wait to see you next month.